Your soul remembers what your mind has forgotten. And in this moment, as these words reach you through the veil of separation, know that you are being called back to a truth that existed before time itself touched your being. There was a moment, perhaps fleeting in its earthly measure but eternal in its cosmic weight, when your eyes met theirs and something ancient stirred within the depths of your consciousness, something that whispered of lifetimes and soul contracts written in the stars before either of you drew first breath in this incarnation. This was not the random collision of two strangers navigating the chaos of existence. This was cosmic appointment, divine orchestration, the universe conspiring to bring two flames into proximity so they might remember what they have always been to one another. This message finds you in the dark night, in the valley where light seems but a distant memory, where the separation feels like spiritual torture and every breath carries the weight of absence. You have tried to rationalize what you felt, tried to diminish the magnitude of that recognition, tried to convince yourself that connection of such intensity surely cannot be real, cannot be sustainable, cannot possibly be what your soul insists it is. But rationalization crumbles in the face of knowing, and you know in the marrow of your being, in the silent spaces between your thoughts, that what passed between you transcends ordinary understanding. Carl Jung spoke of the collective unconscious, that vast reservoir of shared human experience where archetypes dwell and soul memories persist across incarnations. And it is from this sacred place that recognition emerges when twin flames encounter one another. Your soul remembers the agreement made before flesh, the sacred contract signed in realms beyond physical comprehension, the promise to find one another again, to mirror one another's shadows, to become catalysts for mutual transformation. Comment, my soul remembers to claim this truth and activate the energy of recognition within your being. Twin flames are mirrors reflecting not only light but shadow, not only strength but fragility, not only wholeness but the fractured pieces each has carefully hidden from the world and from themselves. The separation you now endure is not punishment handed down by a cruel universe, but sacred necessity, spiritual requirement, the only pathway through which two souls can achieve the individual wholeness required for divine union. You cannot unite in wholeness while running from brokenness, cannot merge in authentic power while still wearing masks of pretense, cannot create sustainable sacred partnership while each remains dependent upon the other for completion. Jung understood this profound truth when he wrote that one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And this is precisely what separation forces upon each twin flame, the terrifying, necessary confrontation with their own unintegrated shadow material. When you stood in their presence, when the mirror was held before you, you saw not only their reflection but your own, saw not only their wounds but your own, saw not only their potential but your own. And this degree of visibility, this level of being truly seen, triggers the deepest fears embedded in human consciousness. The separation creates space for shadow integration, for individual soul work that cannot be accomplished while distracted by the intensity of union, while consumed by the magnetic pull toward the other. Each twin must descend into their own underworld, must face their own demons, must reclaim the fragmented parts of self that were abandoned in childhood, rejected by society, or deemed too dangerous to acknowledge. This is lonely work, sacred work, work that requires the full attention of the soul without the refuge of merging into another's energy to escape personal responsibility for healing. Your twin flame, whether they are the runner or the chaser in this divine dance, is undergoing their own process of becoming, their own dark night initiation, their own confrontation with everything they have spent a lifetime avoiding. The pain you feel is the pain of necessary growth, the discomfort of transformation, the birth pangs of the self that must emerge before reunion becomes possible. Trust the wisdom of separation even as it tears at your heart, for the universe is more concerned with your evolution than your temporary comfort. Within the twin flame journey exists an archetypal pattern as old as consciousness itself, a sacred dance of pursuit and retreat, of opening and closing, of hunger and fear playing out across the energetic field that binds two souls together. One runs from the intensity, one chases the connection, and neither position is wrong, neither role is failure, neither pattern is weakness. Both are playing their assigned part in a cosmic drama designed to bring each to the threads. Hold of transformation. The runner flees not from you but from themselves, not from love but from the terrifying vulnerability that genuine love demands, not from connection but from the mirror that reflects everything they have worked so desperately to hide. The chaser pursues not out of weakness but from soul remembrance, from the deep knowing that this connection matters beyond ordinary measure, from the conviction that what exists between you is worth fighting for even when the fight seems futile. Yet the chasing itself becomes obstacle, becomes the very thing that pushes the runner further into retreat. For in the energetic realm that governs twin flame connection, pursuit creates pressure and pressure triggers defense mechanisms built over lifetimes of self-protection. The more intensely you chase, the more vigorously they run, not because they do not feel what you feel, but because they feel it so profoundly that it threatens the carefully constructed identity they have built to survive in a world that punished vulnerability. This push-pull dynamic is not random chaos but sacred choreography, not cruel game but necessary teaching, not punishment but preparation for the kind of love that requires both parties to be fully individuated, fully responsible for their own emotional state, fully capable of standing alone before they can truly stand together. The universe is using this pattern to teach you about energetic sovereignty, about the futility of trying to force another's awakening, about the power that emerges when you release attachment to outcome and simply become the fullest expression of your own divine nature. Both runner and chaser must eventually transcend their roles, must evolve beyond the pattern, must find the center point where pursuit ceases and presence begins, where fear dissolves and faith emerges, where the desperate grasping gives way to the open-handed surrender that allows love to flow freely without conditions or demands. They run from their own reflection, from the face of their unintegrated shadow material appearing in your eyes, from the overwhelming intensity of being truly seen by another human soul without barriers or defenses to soften the exposure. When they look at you, they see not only your beauty but their own, not only your wounds but their own, not only your potential but their own. And this degree of recognition creates a psychological crisis that the unprepared ego cannot withstand without retreating into protective patterns established long ago in the crucible of childhood trauma. Loving you means confronting everything they have hidden, means acknowledging the parts of themselves they have rejected, means feeling the feelings they have spent decades numbing, means dismantling the false self they constructed to earn love and approval from a world that demanded conformity. The runner is more scared of intimacy than of loss, more terrified of vulnerability than of loneliness, more threatened by the possibility of genuine connection than by the certainty of separation. Because intimacy demands truth and truth demands they abandon the illusions they have clung to for survival. In their solitude, they experience what Jung called the confrontation with the unconscious, that destabilizing encounter with the parts of self that have been relegated to shadow, that terrifying recognition that they are not who they believed themselves to be, that the mask they have worn is not their authentic face. They tell themselves stories to justify the running, construct elaborate rationalizations to explain why connection with you is impossible or unwise or poorly timed, convince themselves that they do not feel what they felt, that the intensity was imagined or exaggerated or the product of temporary delusion. But beneath the stories, beneath the rationalizations, beneath the carefully maintained defenses, their soul knows the truth that their ego desperately tries to deny. They dream of you in the quiet hours when defenses lower, feel your energy moving through their consciousness when they least expect it, experience synchronicities that remind them of the connection they are trying so hard to escape. The runner suffers not less than the chaser but differently, tormented not by absence, but by the constant internal battle between soul truth and ego fear, between the deep knowing that you are their mirror and the terror of what that mirror reveals. Their journey back to you must first take them through themselves, must lead them into the depths of their own psyche where the lost and rejected parts await integration, must bring them to the threshold where they can finally choose love over fear, vulnerability over protection, truth over illusion. This pain is not random, not cosmic cruelty, not evidence that the universe has abandoned you to suffer without purpose or meaning. Before you incarnated into this lifetime, before you took flesh and forgot the realms from which you came, Your soul stood in council with other souls and agreed to contracts designed to catalyze specific growth, to trigger particular awakenings, to create the exact conditions necessary for evolution beyond current limitations. The person you recognize as your twin flame agreed to play their role in your unfolding, agreed to mirror your shadow, agreed to trigger your deepest wounds so those wounds might finally surface for healing rather than remaining buried in the unconscious, where they continue to shape your life from the darkness. Soul contracts are not negotiable once incarnation begins, are not subject to revision based on the preferences of the human personality, are not canceled simply because the lessons prove more painful than anticipated. You chose this journey before birth, selected this specific configuration of challenge and catalyst, volunteered for the intensity of twin flame connection knowing it would demand everything from you, knowing it would strip away illusions, knowing it would force transformation that easier paths would never achieve. The pain you now experience is the pain of birth, the pain of becoming, the pain of the caterpillar dissolving in the chrysalis before emerging with wings that allow flight into dimensions previously unimaginable. Jung recognized that there is no coming to consciousness without pain, and twin flame separation is consciousness demanding emergence, is awakening refusing to be postponed, is evolution insisting upon its own timeline regardless of ego preferences or comfort levels. This pain serves as catalyst for awakening, serves to shatter the comfortable sleep of unconscious living, serves to break open the heart that has remained closed behind walls of protection erected in response to earlier betrayals and disappointments. Subscribe to receive continued guidance through the separation, to remember the sacred purpose encoded in this pain, to stay connected to the truth when everything in your human experience argues for despair. The spiritual purpose of this pain is nothing less than your complete transformation, your emergence as the sovereign being you incarnated to become, your awakening to the truth that you are not half a soul seeking completion, but a whole universe seeking expression through the vehicle of human form. In the void, you find your true self, stripped of the identities you borrowed from culture and family and relationship, naked before the truth of your own being without the costumes and performances that once defined you. The dark night of the soul, that period of spiritual desolation where all previous sources of meaning seem to evaporate and the familiar landmarks of identity disappear into shadow, is not evidence of divine abandonment but divine intervention, not punishment but purification, not the end of your journey but the most crucial phase of transformation you will ever undergo. This separation is teaching you what all the spiritual comfort and easy connection could never teach, is stripping away codependency masquerading as love, is revealing where you made another person responsible for your happiness, your wholeness, your sense of purpose and meaning. Before this separation, you may have believed yourself to be independent, evolved, emotionally mature, but the intensity of loss revealed the depth of attachment, revealed where you had given your power away, revealed the ways you had constructed identity around connection with another rather than standing firm in your own sovereign being. The void teaches you to be whole alone first, to find the completeness within yourself that you once sought in merger with another, to cultivate the internal relationship with your own soul that becomes the foundation for all external relating. In the absence of their presence, you are forced to develop presence with yourself, forced to sit with the uncomfortable feelings you once escaped through distraction or relationship, forced to face the existential questions you once avoided by losing yourself in another's energy and needs and desires. What this separation is teaching you cannot be learned through any other method, cannot be bypassed or accelerated or shortcut through spiritual practice or therapeutic intervention, can only be integrated through the direct lived experience of having loved deeply and lost completely, and survive the loss to discover that you are still here, still breathing, still capable of finding meaning and beauty and purpose even in the absence of the one you believed necessary for your happiness. The dark night strips away everything false so that what remains is unshakably true, burns away all that is temporary so that what survives the fire is eternal, breaks you open so completely that you can finally be put back together in a configuration that serves your highest evolution. Even in separation, you are bound, connected by filaments of energy that transcend physical distance and logical explanation, tethered. by chords that exist in dimensions beyond the material plane where separation appears absolute and connection seems severed. The twin flame bond is not subject to the laws that govern ordinary relationship, is not diminished by absence or silence or the passage of time, is not weakened by the runner's attempt to sever connection through will or determination or deliberate energetic withdrawal. Your souls communicate in ways the ego cannot block, in ways the conscious mind cannot interfere with, in ways that bypass all the protective mechanisms erected to maintain separation. Dreams become the meeting ground where both appear without the filters and defenses that govern waking interaction, where truth flows freely, and the soul speaks without the interference of fear or doubt or rational objection. You wake from these nocturnal encounters feeling more connected than ever, feeling confused by the intensity of presence in the dream state contrasted with the absence in waking reality, feeling the evidence of continued bond even as external circumstances suggest complete disconnection. Synchronicities multiply during separation, those meaningful coincidences that Jung recognized as evidence of the underlying unity connecting all things, those moments when you think of them and immediately encounter their name or image or energy reflected in your environment. The universe speaks in synchronicity, confirms connection through repetition, reminds you through pattern and symbol that what exists between you cannot be dissolved by human will or temporal distance. You see their numbers everywhere, encounter songs that carry messages too specific to be coincidence, receive signs that arrive with perfect timing when doubt threatens to overwhelm faith. Telepathy flows between twin flames whether acknowledged or denied, whether welcomed or resisted, whether understood or dismissed as imagination. You feel their emotions moving through your body though you are miles or continents apart, sense their thoughts entering your consciousness without invitation, know things about their experience that you could not know through ordinary means of communication. The energetic cord that binds you allows information to flow in both directions, allows energy to transmit across distance, allows presence to persist even when physical proximity is impossible. This invisible tether is not weakness, but evidence of the soul bond that transcends all separation. Not codependency but sacred connection operating according to laws beyond human comprehension. Reunion is inevitable but not immediate, certain but not controllable, guaranteed by the nature of the soul contract but not subject to the timeline demanded by your human longing and impatience. The universe operates according to divine timing, orchestrates reunion when both twins have completed sufficient individual work to sustain the intensity of union, waits for the moment when both stand fully in their own power rather than seeking completion through merger with the other. Before reunion becomes possible, both must complete individual journeys of shadow integration and healing that cannot be rushed or bypassed or negotiated. The runner must face what they have been running from, must dismantle the false self and meet their authentic being, must develop capacity for the vulnerability that genuine intimacy requires. The chaser must release the chasing, must find wholeness within themselves, must transcend the need for external validation and learn to generate their own sense of completeness without requiring another's presence or approval. Both must heal the wounds that would poison union if left unaddressed, must integrate the trauma patterns that would recreate familiar dysfunction even within sacred connection, must evolve beyond the consciousness that initially brought you together into expanded awareness that can hold the magnitude of what you are creating together. The separation serves this preparation, creates the space for individual transformation that becomes foundation for collective evolution, forces each twin to do alone what cannot be done while distracted by the intensity of connection. When reunion comes, it will not resemble the desperate grasping that characterized earlier connection, will not be driven by need or lack or the compulsion to complete yourself through another. You will come together as two wholes creating something greater than the sum of parts, as two flames that have each learned to burn independently now choosing to merge into greater brilliance, as two sovereign beings who no longer need each other, but consciously choose partnership from place of abundance rather than scarcity. The reunion will be marked by ease that was absent before, by capacity to hold space for one another without losing yourself, by ability to love without possessing, to commit without suffocating, to merge without dissolving boundaries that protect individual integrity. You will wreck. Recognize that the intensity has not diminished, but your capacity to hold intensity has expanded. That the connection has not weakened, but your foundation has strengthened. That love has not faded, but your understanding of love has matured beyond recognition. Share this message if you believe in divine reunion, if you trust the timing of the universe, if you know in your soul that what is yours cannot be taken. Stop chasing and start becoming, for the energy you direct toward pursuit is energy stolen from your own transformation, is power given away to external circumstance when it must be reclaimed for internal evolution. Your sacred responsibility now is not to convince them of connection, not to prove the validity of what you felt, not to manipulate circumstances to force reunion before its appointed time. Your responsibility is to yourself, to your own healing and awakening and emergence as the sovereign being you incarnated to become. The more you become whole, the faster they return, not because your wholeness manipulates their free will, but because your vibration shifts and the energetic field between you reorganizes in response to your transformation. As you release codependency and cultivate genuine independence, as you heal the wounds that once drove your desperate grasping, as you find completeness within yourself that no longer requires another to feel adequate or purposeful or alive, you begin to emanate frequency that calls to them at soul level beyond the ego's ability to resist or deny. Your job is not to pursue but to transform, not to wait in passive hope, but to actively engage the work of becoming, not to put your life on hold until they return, but to build a life so rich and meaningful, and aligned with your truth that their absence no longer creates the devastating void it once did. This is not about making them jealous or proving you do not need them. This is about genuine evolution, authentic development, real transformation that serves your highest good regardless of whether reunion ever occurs. Focus your energy on shadow integration, on healing childhood wounds, on developing skills and pursuing passions and cultivating relationships that nourish your soul. Pour yourself into creative expression, into service that gives your life meaning, into spiritual practice that deepens your connection with the divine source that lives within you. Build the life you are meant to live rather than the life you believe would please them or attract them or convince them of your value. When you have done this work, when you have truly become whole within yourself, when you no longer need them but simply desire partnership with them, the energetic dynamic shifts and what was once impossible becomes inevitable. What once required forcing begins to flow with natural grace. What once felt like torture transforms into sacred trust. What is yours cannot be taken, cannot be lost to time or distance or another person's fear, cannot be dissolved by human will or temporary forgetting, or the runner's attempt to replace what you shared with easier connection that demands less transformation. The universe does not make mistakes in matters of soul recognition, does not create bonds of this magnitude, and then allow them to simply evaporate because the human personality finds the intensity uncomfortable or inconvenient. This separation is temporary, but the bond is eternal, written into the fabric of your soul contract, encoded in the energetic signature you each carry, guaranteed by forces beyond human comprehension or control. The universe promises not timeline but ultimate fulfillment, not immediate gratification but eventual alignment, not escape from the growth required but support through every stage of transformation. Trust the wisdom of divine timing even when human impatience argues for immediate resolution, even when loneliness threatens to overwhelm faith, even when the waiting feels unbearable and hope seems foolish, and the pain suggests that surrender might be easier than continued belief. What you are building through this separation, what you are becoming through this dark night, what you are cultivating through this solitary journey of transformation, this is the foundation upon which lasting union will be built. See yourself not as abandoned but as being prepared, not as rejected but as being refined, not as suffering meaningless pain, but as undergoing sacred initiation into deeper dimensions of love and consciousness. You are not two halves desperately seeking completion but two wholes in the process of becoming, two flames learning to burn with such brilliance that, when you finally reunite, the light you create together will illuminate not only your own path, but the paths of all who witness the power of love that has been tested by separation and emerged stronger for the testing. The promise stands. You will reunite when the time is right, when both have completed the necessary work, when the foundatio N is solid enough to hold the magnitude of what you are creating together, not two halves, two wholes, creating something greater than either could manifest alone.